All right, we are recording, and
Jeremiah, Jeremiah, come back, come
we're
back.
gonna start streaming with Jeremiah's laugh in 3, 2, 1. All right, we should be
Welcome
live.
back.
Why
Welcome
don't we
back to
give it
D&D, guys.
just a second here, Justin? I'm gonna refresh the Twitch stream on my laptop to see if it's actually
Sounds great.
live. All right, confirmed we are live now.
Excellent. Welcome back to D&D, guys. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome. If you're joining us from times before, we are going to continue our recap of our epic 6-year-long campaign. This is a long one. It probably will be 3 parts, and it's exciting. We're going to be getting into more character introduction and more excitement surrounding our search for Decivis. Does anyone remember where we ended last time? We ended at the Tad taking us to
Bloody
the Bloody
Bowl?
Bowl.
Yeah.
Yes. So we had an interesting encounter before then on the road where there were 2 groups that were fighting and attacking, and the party didn't really have an idea of how or where or who to help. And then this wizard just materialized, and he introduced himself with a very, very long name, seemingly important and unimportant at the same time. And then he vanished, and Tad said, "Well, let's continue. I know a place." So,
What was his name again?
It was
Cat?
named the Bull's Blood Inn.
Bull's Blood Inn.
No,
for sure.
the wizard.
Oh,
Usador.
his name is Usador, Wizard
Yeah.
of the 12 Realms of Karnath, and then a whole bunch of other things after that, which I have conveniently forgot at this point. But so you were on the road, and Tad says, "Hey, I know somewhere where we can stay," and you are at. Do we have Roll20 up?
Yeah, give me just a second here.
No problem. I want to make sure that we're all on the same spot on the map.
Where do you want me to be on the map?
The very big word that says Breland is right over the Dragonwood, which is where we find ourselves.
All right, I got the map open, and it's around the Breland area.
Okay. So you're on the road in this very general vicinity right here, and Tad, who is your guide, and for some of you new viewers, we are in the world of Eberron, and we're on. There's a whole bunch of books you can read on that, created by Keith Baker, and it's published for 3.5 edition and 4th edition and 5th edition D&D, but is modifiable to many different systems, tabletop gaming systems, role-playing systems. So if we are on our way to Sharn, and we have hired a guide that's been sort of given to us as a favor for things that we did and helped with. And at this point, the party consists of Occam, the Minotaur cleric, Enceladus, the Vryloka, which is sort of like a vampire but not really, warlock, and Tam, the what is he?
He's an Eladrin Ranger.
The Eladrin. I was just gonna say elf, but he's an Eladrin Ranger, which is Eladrin is a very specific D&D race, and actually, it's highlighted mainly in Eberron. When it comes to it. But they have a guide with them, who is Tad, and he is a human, and he seems to know a lot about a lot of things. and he is also very skilled at being a guide or a scout or ranger or something. And he says, "Hey, I know a place where we can go." And so you make it to this clearing that is a river, and right next to the river is a boat. And he says, everyone get in the boat, and you start rowing upstream in this boat. And eventually, the river, you find the mouth of a cave, and the river is coming out of the cave. And he just says, "Keep rowing," and you keep rowing as you go into this cave and continue. And the walls become slimy, and there are fungus on the walls and everything. And you after a while you make it to a somewhat, like, it doesn't look natural, but it's sort of like carved into the rock. It's like a dock of some sort. You kind of pull off to the side, and you can see kind of light flickering around a couple corners, and you move as a group towards this entrance that's well lit, but it's kind of carved into the side of this cave wall. And you see a couple guards, actually one guard at the gate. And do you guys remember what happened there?
No.
Ted was gonna leave us for a little bit. He said he'd meet us later, and he took Rook with him. And he said, when you get there, just tell him Tad sent us.
Right.
And there's like a giant man with an axe guarding the door. And like when we say, we send Enceladus first, because of course she's like beautiful, good looking, and charming. And she says, Tad sent us. And the guy kind of like relaxes, and he pounds on the door a few times, and he lets us in. There was another door there with like blood smears all on the floor, like in front of that door. We didn't go into that door.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, there was a left and a right, and the left was the door with the blood smears on it, and the right took you down a corridor. The guard at the front, his name was Manny. He actually said, "Oh, Tad, I know Tad. Welcome, come on in. If you're friends of Tad, you're friends of mine." He was a very large man who had a giant axe, and his name was Manny. And as you went down this sort of wet corridor, there was a goblin who was sitting at sort of a bouncer's chair, sort of a seat, before you were able to get into the bar of sorts. Trying to remember what his name is. I think I have.
He had some books, and
Yep, that's right.
part of my character Tam's backstory was his spire had been like under attack by goblins. He was stuck in Dargoon, and so he did not like goblins at all. And so there's this friendly little goblin sitting there with books. But I think Tam decided to give him a chance. But when we said Tad sent us, it was kind of like the secret password in this place. Like everyone like went from like kind of uptight to like relaxed. Oh, actually, and the goblin said, "Oh, I heard Tad sent you," and he let us in. Right. That's
right. I don't have an official name for the goblin. It was just the goblin concierge, and so everyone so far has been just kind of like lights up as you say Tad sent us. So he ushers you into this dank bar that's kind of in the middle of this kind of carved out rock area, and when you set the scene, there are a couple people sitting at some tables. There's two people sitting at the bar, and then there's a bartender. All of you decided to sit at the bar. There's a couple kind of really rough-looking people in this tavern here, and the bartender says, you guys identified that Tad sent you, and he says, "Oh, Tad sent you. Well, okay, let's set you up here. Do you need a room? Do you what do you need?" He just was really open with what you need. I'm trying to remember whether one of you went over to any of the other patrons in the bar. Do you guys remember that?
I know that a female did approach us. Um, Came over to us and asked if we were looking for a good time. And Celestine, showing off his charisma, says, "What did Celestine say?"
I don't
Celestine,
remember.
Celestine.
He says, "Tad sent us. You boys looking for a good time? Tad sent us."
Oh
And
yeah.
she's like, "Oh, I wish Tad was here right now."
Yeah, she actually remembered him. Yes.
Yeah.
Right. I forgot to introduce that Celestine was with us at that point too, and Rook. Rook was also with us. There's
Well, I think Tad took Rick with that day. Jake was gone that day, so Rook conveniently went with Tad.
That's right. I remember that.
Hmm.
Weren't they trying to secure like a wagon of sorts, or like a
Yeah,
way?
they're trying to fix our wagon or something. But there was also a wizard sitting in the bar in the corner,
Yes.
kind
Oh.
of muttering and sputtering and kind of getting animated.
That's exactly right.
And there were some gnomes there.
That's right.
So we ended up going and talking to the wizard.
Really-
Right?
I remember the wizard had some like really extreme interest, but I can't recall what it was.
Yeah, I know what his extreme interest was.
Well, and there was like the gnomes came over and they were like, "Hey, do you guys want to play cards?" And Tam, my character, was like, yeah, super interested. But Akam at this point didn't want to talk to anyone, and you were like, "No, Killjoy." I actually have written down in my journal, Killjoy.
Right.
And then the other interesting thing that happened is at some point we ordered meat.
Yes,
We ordered
meat.
food. And in Celadus, we were all like kind of looking at the meat, and it was brought in by this golem. A big golem kind of like carried it in, and then Celadus tasted it, and she stopped and she said, "No one is eating the meat."
Yes, that's right. Yeah, she said, "Trust
But I
me,
tell her
you don't want to eat the meat." And everyone sort of like dropped their fork and believed that. And so I don't know.
Some kind of
He's like
humanoid meat.
humanoid or something. Humanoid
Yeah.
meat.
All this want to tell us
Yeah.
what it was at this point, or it'll forever remain a secret. You don't want to know, sort of thing.
I think that Enceladus could just tell like that it was meat of some some species that is sentient,
Like
Right.
dog, horse, or dolphin, or human of some sort.
human, like human or humanoid.
Yeah.
you know.
I'd forgotten about that. That's totally right.
Yeah.
So the wizard that was at the bar, he had an interesting staff. It had a whole bunch of gears that were sort of like planetary gears that were kind of moving around. And he introduced himself as Delgado the Brown. And he said, "I am Wizard of the 12, and I represent House Cannith." And he also couldn't stop talking about the glitter dust. That was the thing that he was obsessed about. Is
So they had amazing potatoes.
yes, they had fried potatoes, spiced potatoes.
Turnips.
Was it
turnips? I don't know. I remember turnips, but maybe not.
It was spiced potatoes, and that is.
He says he's on a quest to stop darkness in the world.
Yes.
Which we,
Right.
of course, instantly took him very seriously right away. Like,
Right. Because darkness, something quest to do something about darkness. Yes. Yeah. So the spiced potatoes, really quick, are a very small shout out to the series of books, Dragonlance books. If any of you have started from the beginning of the Dragonlance series, you'd know exactly what spiced potatoes mean to the players.
Okay.
Anyway, I knew that none of you had read any of the Dragonlance books. I didn't know about Joe, but I threw that in there for this point, for this time when I'm able to reveal that it was an Easter egg from the Dragonlance series. So anyway.
Pulling back the DM screen
for whatever that's worth. It's
Yeah.
beautiful. Look it
Uh-huh.
up. Reread Dragonlance if you've read it before. Read it for the first time if you've never read it. It's wonderful. Anyway, spiced potatoes. But so Delgado, does he unload any information on you, or is he just sort of a
Well,
flavorful character?
yeah, he seems like he knows stuff. At one point, somebody enlists us to. There's like some guys in the corner that they want kicked out of the bar, and they're like, "Hey, with your guys' help and Manny, you guys could kick him out, and like we don't want to cause any trouble. We'll sort things out when Tad gets here."
Yeah.
But then Delgado also, I think Tam ended up like trying to use the restroom, and then when he came back, he went and talked to Delgado before Occam could stop him, because Occam was like, "No, we're not talking to anybody." But Tam was like,
That's right.
skirted around him. But it turns out that he knows Delgado knows Tad, and he knows Orla.
That's right. He knows of Orla, but yes, he definitely he knows Tad and Orla. And
he also gives us some info on one of his fellow 12s, I think Stephen the Purple, or Stefan the Purple, maybe.
Yeah, it wasn't Stefan the Purple. It was
so one of the wizards that had to do with portals.
Yeah, it was Jaunt the Purple. It was it was an Eladrin.
Okay, Jaunt. We know Jaunt. Jaunt.
Yeah, you know Jaunt.
He'll be around.
That's right.
And then he talked a lot, and then he poofed away.
That's right. He did poof away. The fun thing about these wizards is they just have the ability to kind of use teleportation, and they can kind of go at a moment's notice without having any attachment or need to be escorted anywhere. So it's the beauty of being a DM. They can just kind of disappear whenever you want to. So what did the party do next? Did they rally and try to stir things up in the name of Tad?
Well, the gnomes that were there, and by the way, I'm totally cheating because I wrote stuff down.
I know.
It's not like I remember all this stuff. I remember a lot of it, but the notes help. But while we're sitting there, the gnomes that wanted to play cards come over, and they slip us a note, and then they leave. Yep. And the note says, "Couldn't help but over here, Orla, we'd love to talk. We'll be at the end of the hall."
Mm-hmm. Right. So you guys decide to get a room.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of becomes that time of night where you turn in.
Tad shows up. Everybody cheers.
Tad shows up. Everyone is like, "Oh, Tad!" Everyone in the bar for some reason knows Tad. Everyone does,
except for the dwarf and the human, who they wanted us to help kick him out. They were like,
"That's right."
Obviously, the odd man's out.
That's exactly.
Odd dwarf and human out.
Right. Exactly. So then,
the goblin leads us to a room, and he's like, "Well, what about your slave?" Pointing to Celestine, assuming that our Warforged was
right.
That didn't go well.
Right.
If I recall.
So if we're talking about lore of Eberron, the Warforged is a created sentient being that was used in the last Great War. They were emancipated at the very end of the war by the Treaty of Thronehold, and so now the world, after 4 years of what one would call peace, post-war, Cold War, kind of scenario, everyone is having to sort of get used to the idea that Warforged are contributing members of society and actually they're more than just war machines, and so we have a Warforged in our party. He has not fought in the Great War, doesn't have a lot of context about that level of sort of what you would call racism, maybe, but he's definitely seeing that from a lot of the NPCs we encounter, seeing that level of bias and prejudice. And Celestine is like, "I don't understand what you're talking about." at best, and wants to fight.
He was born after all of this, right?
He totally was. Yeah, he became sentient after, like, 4 years after the Great War. Right when you guys kind of found him, there was an arc from one of the arcane generators, and it caused him to spark to life. So he is living in a world completely oblivious of any sort of history of being, a sort of a slave for those who bought him to fight in the Great War, but also having a whole world that is accommodating for Warforged in this world now as independent, free to do as they want as independents, which is interesting. I mean, it's an interesting thing to add to a story that hasn't really caught fire, but could very well catch fire in your own Eberron game if you decide to play it.
It kind of just occurred to me that so the Treaty of Thronehold, didn't it? It freed all the Warforged, and it shut down the Creation Forges, so no new Warforged.
So no more new Warforged, and all Warforged that are created and alive now are free. They're not owned by anyone. Yeah,
so
no,
Celestine born after that and born free. So Celestine might be the only Warforged in all of Eberron who was always free.
Yeah, very well could be. As far as the party knows, this forge, this forbidden forge, was started up illegally, and has been making sentient Warforged and other creatures. The drakes and the other mechanical things you guys fought there post end of war, post Treaty of Thronehold. So it's a little bit of an interesting scenario where these Warforged are being created, but also either know that they're free or know that they're not free. In certain areas. So Celestine is very, very, very unique in this world, which makes for a great character background. So it also makes for a great, like, he was just born, so he knows almost nothing, which is sort of a unique scenario as well. And Jake has encountered some challenges with that, and also some really wonderful points in that too. So
it's an interesting character to role play going into it, not knowing that your character doesn't know anything. So having a lot of experience playing in Forgotten Realms and quite a bit in Eberron as well. When something comes up, you have to pretend that you don't know anything about that and sort of react to it as if it's a fresh thing, which has been fun but also really difficult.
Yeah, and that's something that I think we've sort of realized as we've played, to like realize as a story facilitator that this character really truly doesn't know much at all, and so the impact of the oppression and then freedom of the Warforged doesn't hit like I think I wanted it to hit in the beginning. And so if Celestine had participated in the Great War, had been owned by a house or owned by a region that fought, it might have different impact. But the fact that you became aware post Treaty of Thronehold and post war, it kind of negates a lot of that. So when you encounter that level of prejudice in the world, I think it's an interesting scenario to have to try to role play that out. So anyway, that's a very long explanation to the scenario where this goblin concierge says, well, where are we going to put your slave, sort of thing. Where would you like us to park your slave? Because obviously the goblin, he's been around for a while and thinks still that Warforged are slaves.
Tolerated.
Right. Anyway.
Right. So
yeah.
The gnomes, we end up meeting with these gnomes who we met at the inn, and they say, hey, you knew Orla. You know Orla. Well, we are Orla's cousins. And we kind of fill them in on what we're doing, fill them in on the Miners Guild, Eston, where the forge was, the Lord of Blades that we kind of encountered, the kidnapping of Orla. They ask us, how hard have you been looking? And they tell us that they're going to Sharn. They picked up her trail going to Sharn. They suggest that we go as a group. And they also tell us they've been investigating Murtali's death and sending. Murtali being Orla's father.
Orla's father, yeah.
And Enceladus asks the question, you don't think he's dead? And they say, no. They say no one saw a body. And so they are not convinced. Let's see, what else do they know? They seem to know about we tell them about the Serrani.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole invasion from another plane thing.
And so, for those listening, we all in the campaign know exactly who the Serrani are, but I think we touched on it last stream, but there is this portal with this dragon that everyone faced and fought, and there were people beyond the portal in a different realm, and they've been named in Murtali's journal and a few other spaces, but you get the idea that they are sort of the force behind the storyline that are being followed here, and they may be the force behind the kidnapping of Orla. And so these gnomes are dropping this concept, and it's connecting with the adventurers because of the other few references that they've gotten. So it's like the curtain's lifted for a moment, and this name is thrown out, and it's associated with potentially the movement and the effort to kidnap or to do things that are counter to what the group is trying to do. So anyway, they will flesh out quite a bit more later in the story, but if that name sounds unfamiliar, it will become very familiar to you.
The
So I'm actually
gnomes
going to. Sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead.
I'm gonna go ahead and link in the chat our YouTube video of our last recap. So if you're curious about catching up about what we talked about in our last recap, there is going to be a link in the chat here in just a second. Go ahead,
So
Joe.
the gnomes tell us that their names are Zep and Mole.
Yep.
And the other thing they mention is that the Serrani, they lack metals and materials on the plane that they're on. And that's they got a lot of skill with constructing things. Anyway, early that morning, we're going to leave with them. We make plans to leave with the gnomes in the morning, but early in the morning, a note slides under our door, and it's a note that says, "Sorry guys, got a better offer, Tad." The gnomes are gone when we get upstairs.
So Tad never came back. He said, "You guys go bed down. I have some people to catch up with," and he never came back that night. And you get this note that slid under your door that says, "Sorry guys, got a better offer, Tad." Yeah.
Yeah. Tad, man.
Yeah.
But there is we like start heading out. There's a Rook had been working on the cart all night. He didn't see anything. He was like oblivious to stuff. There was a little stable boy, and he says, "Oh yeah, these gnomes, they said to give you this," and it's a message that says, "Meet us at the gates of Sharn."
So do you guys remember what happens before that? Because there is an encounter before that. An encounter that ends in an endless sandstorm. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that. Like, that's what I remember.
It's still going.
About.
It is still going. Yeah.
How did it start though? Like.
Oh, I remember how it starts. It's that freaking rod.
Well,
no, but like, how did the encounter itself start? I know how it ended.
Well, I just remember us feeling funny about the rooms, that he was suspicious, that maybe guests go missing, that it's kind of their supply for their specialty dish. And so I remember like kind of doing like a watch at the door of the rooms or things like that. But
Were you guys
I'm a little
suspicious about where Tad might have gone? Was that sort of a...
That was a part of it too. We didn't believe that he just was going to up and bounce.
Yeah.
And so we thought, you know what, maybe he's gone missing. Maybe he'll become part of the next meal. And so we wanted to go and investigate the other side of the tavern that when the to the left, to the right, we wanted to see what was behind the bloody door, I think.
That's right. You made your way around. You found some storerooms. You found, a wine barrel room, and then you found a door that led you to an area that had a whole bunch of prison cells, and there was blood everywhere, and there were, it wasn't a good scene. And you started fighting some of the characters that you had encountered before. You fought the concierge. You fought Manny. The bartender was in there. And because of Enceladus's newly acquired Rod of Chaos, which as it is named, every time a daily power was used, that rod had to go off. And the end of this encounter, the rod created a sandstorm inside this cell area, which caused everyone to be completely blinded, like totally unable to see anything. And you guys were able to make it out. You had to fight that rock golem. You were snooping in areas that you weren't supposed to be snooping, and the people that ran the bar and knew about those back rooms wanted to keep you away from that. You did escape because of the sandstorm. That was the key and critical part of the encounter. You were able to make it up. Yeah, you were able to make it up to the surface, to the stable, and Tad was nowhere in sight. But Rook, who had been working to get the wagon, and conveniently behind the scenes as a DM, Jake was gone that night, who plays Rook, and we basically gave him the job to go up and be not in the encounter, but fixing this wagon for everyone to continue on and to continue down the road, just so that I didn't want Jake to, I didn't want to have to play his character, and I didn't want him to miss very much. So anything we couldn't have.
I'm wondering about this Celestine guy. At one point, the bartender, who's kind of a human guy, says, "What are you guys doing?" And we say, "We don't want any trouble." He says, "Well, Tad's in trouble," and Celestine says, "Bring him to us if you want to see your kids."
Oh,
That's
yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
that all
he
about?
was Celestine for some reason thought that Manny was hiding Tad from us and rolled a really, really successful intimidate roll.
That's right.
Celestine's actually really good at intimidating.
That's right.
And Manny just kind of stepped aside because he realized that, okay, I do want to see my kids, so I don't want to mess with this guy.
I imagine, someone that is new in the world trying to use intimidation. I think Celestine went over the top, like times 10 in this intimidation roll, to the point where he kind of overshot the mark of what was effective to get information out of this guy.
So the
He
lawful
usually does that.
good paladin doesn't mean he's lawful nice.
Right. He's like, I will rip your entire, like guts out. Oh, wait a minute. We just needed a little bit of information.
And the other really funny note was that Enceladus uses her Rod of Chaos accidentally. I don't. At one point, you
used it accidentally. I wasn't even intending on using it.
You didn't think it was gonna trigger, and you used it accidentally.
At that time, I don't.
Yeah.
Had you figured out exactly what triggered it at that point?
I don't remember when you guys figured out exactly how it was used or went off. There was that encounter, on the road, with the two different parties that I don't remember. I think you did use it then.
I mean, I think I was aware if I used it daily that it
Oh yeah, you did. I think the
off.
thing was you didn't think that we needed to be in combat in order for it to go off, because we weren't in combat and you used it daily. I think you tried to turn into bats or something.
Something.
Yeah.
I just wrote accidentally. I don't remember what it was, but
so the net result is the Bull's Blood Inn basement now is completely like engulfed in a sandstorm, like for all of eternity that you guys know.
Ever.
It's
Forever.
effectively destroyed. Yeah.
If you ever went back there, it might just be sand. Like it might literally just be full of sand.
But before we escaped, though, we did search and we did find Tad.
Yes.
And he was in rough shape. Both his legs are broken.
That's
we like
right.
drag him back in the boat.
Yep.
Slap him in the face, revive him.
He was in one of the prison cells that you found, which was like your intuition was correct to go back and look for him, and the location was found, and you found Tad, and he was in really rough shape, both legs broken, like really just beat up.
And he starts giving us a story about, I have 3,500 written down. Maybe that's the bounty on his head for Mordain the Flesh Weaver.
Yep, Mordain the Flesh
bounty
Weaver.
on him. Oh yeah, so and kind of tells us, he gives us a story about how he saved these 7 virgins or something like that. I don't know, or I don't know what his story was, but he said that was the deal.
So that probably wasn't on the spot story that I made up, so I have no idea what it was. But he did something noble that made a very, very evil necromancer mad, and so
most noble things do.
As most noble things do, yeah. Tad was like supporting like life and vitality, and this necromancer was like, that's the opposite of what I want. I want death, and then I want reanimation, and so. He got on the bad side of a very, very powerful, very evil necromancer, and that's why
I'd just like to point out in Eberron that doesn't necessarily equal evil.
No, right. I use that word just for a reference because evil is relative, and good and bad are very, very gray in this setting. Film noir is very gray for most of the time. So.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so you guys throw Tad into the wagon, and you hitch up the horse, and you head towards Sharn. You continue on your way towards Sharn. Now, you get to a clearing before you get to Sharn, and a certain group of Miners Guild characters have sort of jumped out of the woods. You find a place to camp, and they have ambushed you. And there is a key character that shows up too. Do you remember that character?
Are we talking about like not a minotaur, but a centaur and a satyr?
Centaur, yes, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
His name was Gorth the Merciless.
Gorth the Merciless, yeah.
And
you were in trouble. You are harboring a fugitive.
So, Joe, we had one of your friends with us at game night that night. Do you remember, like, wasn't it one of the guys from your other group? It wasn't Josh.
I feel like it was Josh.
No, it was Josh. We played a separate, like, one-off or two-off, like, campaign where Joe was the DM.
Oh yeah, well, when I was the DM, there was a couple guys that came. But anyway.
Wait, wasn't it Alec that played Gorth?
Was it Wolfgang?
No.
We
hadn't met Wolfgang yet.
Okay, I think we had one of Joe's friends that
it was either Evan or Kyle. Probably.
Okay.
I'm almost positive that Alec played Gorth.
I don't think so. I don't know. Anyway,
I'm pretty sure.
Somebody
did.
Not us.
We had someone that was not a part of our group. That was one of your guys' friends or relatives.
I do remember that it was my brother because I talked to him on the car ride home, and he was pretty disappointed in how the encounter went. So continue.
Okay,
continue.
That's fine. So,
bad things happen, and he was disappointed with us.
So it was Alec. Let's just say that it was Alec. Essentially, what I did was I created up an actual character sheet for Gorth the Merciless, and I handed it to Alec, and he tried to roleplay this enemy for you guys.
And he did really well.
He did really well. Yeah, and we were very happy with the way he played it. But Gorth is sort of the right-hand man of Mordain the Fleshweaver, and he was coming to collect his bounty, who was Tad. Tad was the liability, sitting in the back of your wagon as you guys were traveling to Sharn. And the battle did not exactly go the way you wanted it to go. You guys defeated some of the Miners Guild. They had the ability to summon the giant fire elemental that you had to fight and be creative about. And then the centaur, like half orc centaur, just shows up and announces who he is and announces what he wants. And then there's a bargain. Do you guys remember there was a bargain struck at the end?
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a defeat, and it wasn't like a concession. It was a bargain that was struck at the end. And Gorth basically said, "All I want is Tad. I will call off everyone else. All I want is Tad."
And the Miners Guild was also there, and they say, "Fair enough." And we say, "All right, you can have him, but we're not going with you."
Yep.
And there was a lot of debate about it, actually. Like, it was a struggle.
That's right.
Because then Tad ends up getting bound.
Yep.
And they like muzzle him, and you could see in his eyes, like, that's when the fear like sets in. But he's like, "Okay, this is what is supposed to happen." His eyes are pained. But they take him off.
I think it was this funny moment where he sort of was sacrificing himself on some level to kind of save you guys. But you also realize that you don't know everything about Tad. He is an enigma of heroism and gray morals and difficulty, and he has sacrificed himself to save you all. And once Gorth has Tad slung over his own back, he takes off. He says it's done.
And
we're done. Yeah.
And then we're just left with the Miners Guild to fight.
Right. And I remember writing out some conditions for Alec, and maybe that's what he didn't like about the situation.
He was really not impressed that we just let Tad go.
You didn't fight for him, and you didn't try to rescue him.
Well, no, I think that we did fight for a while. Like,
we did, and
we
then
were
the Miners Guild showed up,
and then the Miners Guild showed up, and we were getting stomped. There was a huge elemental there. There was all sorts of this.
Yeah.
So if I recall,
and Tad was like, "Hey, look, he's accusing me of like, this thing, and I did it." He's like, "Yeah, I went in and I rescued these people and defended these people, and they didn't like that, so I'm guilty of what they say. I deserved this. You should do it." And we were like,
Now, if I recall, this was at the point in time when Justa would roll it. We would have 3 or 4 different scenarios, and we would roll a d20 to see which one would happen. And out of the 4 scenarios, I recall, Justin, you said this was the worst possible one.
Yes. The thing is, I have a whole history log of scenarios you guys have actually fought in, and this one had 4, and the only one that was touched was the worst one of all of them. And to be perfectly, transparent, one option was to just encounter the Miners Guild. One option was just to encounter Gorth the Merciless. One option was to encounter neither of them and make it to Sharn. And the other encounter was the one that you rolled, and that was to encounter both at the same time and see how that all played out, which I thought was super fascinating to see how it became more of a diplomacy effort than it did to because I didn't balance the two together. You could have defeated the Miners Guild, you could have fought off Gorth, but you couldn't have fought off both of them at the same time. And you could have easily just continued on to Sharn. So I was excited to see how that roll went because of those options.
And one last part of it, we might have been able to fight off one group. We might have been able to fight off the other group, but we were also fighting because after Gorth left, we ended up fighting the Miners Guild. They summoned the fire elemental again, and Occam is still a lycanthrope, and he starts freaking out and turning into a wolf. And these guys, have silver
That's
weapons.
right.
And they're killing Occam. Like, he is almost dead. I have written on my screen here, this is very bad.
Yes. Right. So you now as a party are realizing that the moon frenzy sickness or the lycanthropy is becoming more of a liability to the party than it is actually a benefit to the party. Because as a lycanthrope, you have like triple the damage, but your damage is indiscriminate. You fight both friend and foe with no consideration for the two. It just depends on a direction which you roll on a dice, and it depends on, like at that point, it's pretty much the roll of the dice that determines who you're going to attack with triple damage, because it's incredibly high damage, but it is very directional.
And at this point, Celestine had made Occam the promise that he would keep the party safe from Occam.
Right.
So our tank Celestine at this point was responsible for our unintentional DPS.
Right.
And then to make matters even more different at the roll of a dice, this is when the Rod of Chaos that Enceladus was using came up with number 50, called "You're going to need a new wardrobe." And Enceladus, in the middle of this battle, becomes encased in a crystal cocoon, and she cannot move or do anything until someone smashes her out of this crystal cocoon.
This is where things start getting awesome.
And we kind of have no idea what's going on too, right? Like,
right.
Yeah.
We're like, what's going on? Like, this is bizarre. Like, why?
Did you know what was going on, Wes? No?
No, I had no idea. Like, I mean, not the first time. The second time.
They're like smashing the crystals and they're like falling off Enceladus. And finally they all fall away and reveal her to be
a man.
So one of the catastrophic 10% potentials of the Rod of Chaos, one of the 10 out of 100 was neutral, and the neutrality of the whole thing was that you just changed gender, because that means absolutely nothing in D&D. It has zero bearing on anything.
Well, maybe statistically, like as far as the stats of the character, but for the character itself.
So right,
the social interaction.
Yeah, so for social interactions, for role play, it might have some bearing. Not that I would make that a huge factor, but in the end, it was a very, very, very neutral, very catastrophic change that happened. And the title, "You Will Need a New Wardrobe," was very true. You immediately were different shape and different size, and still had a shock of red hair on your head, and were, every bit Enceladus, but now you were a male. Yeah. Which, I mean, I don't know how you guys were all thinking at that point, but
I'm a robot.
It was a
yeah. I was excited that you guys had hit a catastrophic event and it was neutral, because there are ones that you didn't hit that were catastrophically good or bad that would have literally changed the game for you in a moment. I was kind of excited to have it be a neutral event, that we could ease ourselves into this rod that is of chaos and very, very much unpredictable. So it added easy, infinite color to the whole entire game. So, anyway. So Tad leaves, is taken by Gorth the Merciless. The Miners Guild says, "Okay, we'll back off." Sort of a deal in the whole thing. Or did you guys finish him off?
It was a big, long, brutal fight with the Miners Guild, and it was a big drag-out fight after Gorth left, and that's when Occam wolfed out. That's when Enceladus became a male of the species.
Oh, Ryloka.
Ryloka. And we just barely came out of it alive. It was a brutal battle. And then we sit down, we debrief. We're dealing with Occam, the disease. Occam turns his pack over to Celestine, and we decided to call Silverbell at this point.
Oh yes, right.
We were like a little. I think we were feeling a little defeated and desperate.
Oh yeah.
So we call Silverbell, and he now is sick. He's got no armor on. He's weak. He has lycanthropy because he was bit at the same time as Occam.
Right. Yep.
So he knows no cure. He feels like he's a liability, and he asks for his bell back so he doesn't fall into the wrong hands.
Right.
And he doesn't want us to call him unless we can find a cure.
For those of you listening that haven't watched the first episode, I mean, we could just linked it or weren't on the stream last time. Silverbell is a sort of a patron, someone that we encountered early on. He's a lich, and he gave us his phylactery, which gave the party the ability to call upon him as help in battle. In one of the more recent battles, he also got Moon Frenzy and became a lycanthrope too. And when he was summoned at the end of this battle, he appeared to not be doing very well at all with it. Just as Occam was experiencing the difficulty of navigating this lycanthropy, he also was having a very difficult time. And he did ask for his bell back, his phylactery, which in the world of liches is the way you can summon the lich, or the way the lich can be captured. It's sort of your special thing, the thing that you keep secret, that can destroy you, that you don't want to give to anybody. And he asked for it back.
It's like his one Horcrux.
It is, yeah. It's his Achilles heel. It is his single thing that allows him to be controlled and manipulated. So anyway, he asked for it back because he said, I don't know what I'm capable of, and I don't want to put you guys in risk at any level of risk. And I as a DM, I sort of was wondering, I kind of felt like, hey, you guys are strong enough on your own now at this point, and you have, put your lich friend in peril. He is now ill, and I wanted to sort of tie that storyline up a little bit. And so I had Silverbell ask for his phylactery back so that he could become a character of the past. As we know, he does not become a character of the past, but at this point, I think in his illness, I wanted to sort of allow you guys to stand freely on your own and not need to rely on an extra character you could bring in to boost your firepower in a battle. So anyway, you guys sort of reluctantly give him his bell back, and he disappears. And you're all kind of like, good luck, my friend. I hope that you are well. May we meet again, hopefully. And then you move on. So, Zep, do you guys remember what Zep and Mole had told you to do?
Meet them outside the gates of Sharn?
That's right. And so you guys make it to the gates of Sharn. I don't think you ditched the wagon. I think you all were just kind of sitting in the wagon in the line. So, for Sharn is a city in Breland. If we can pull the map up again, I want to make sure that people know where it is.
Yep, let me go ahead and pull the map up.
Okay.
Did we lose Justin?
Did you lose me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
I don't think you lost me.
Okay, we got you.
Okay. Is map up?
Yes.
Okay. So Sharn is just like some cities in the United States. It is larger than the capital city of Breland, which is Rote. And it is this amazing. It's sort of the New York City of this whole continent. It is beautiful. It is giant, and it is vertical. So it is a city that prides itself on how incredibly, impossibly, magically tall it can be. There are parts at the very top that are floating parts of these towers, but it is called Sharn City of Towers for a reason, because it very much has a wide base, but it is impossibly tall. It's probably 4 or 5 times taller than it is wide, the whole city. and it has zones, and it has areas and neighborhoods, and everything is vertically oriented. You know, what level you live on determines you know, your wealth and your social status, I should say, determines what level you live on. And if you're in the skyway, way at the very top in the floating towers, you are the richest and most elite of the elite. There's commerce, there are guilds, there are schools, there are just hundreds of different things you can do in Sharn. And then as you go further down below, there are manual laborers, there are you know, there's an area called the cogs, which is down just, you know, subterranean into like this crust level with lava and mining and a whole bunch of different stuff. But Sharn in and of it, you could run an entire campaign in Eberron solely in Sharn and not have to leave the boundaries of even a single like section of towers, and you could have an infinite range of options and venues and NPCs and all of these things. So they were headed toward Sharn. The thing that I created, there is a town called First Tower, which is right here. It is very, very close to Sharn. I'm splashing it on.
Let me show the map again. Okay.
I'm splashing it on the screen here. First Tower, which is still on the lightning rail line and on the actual road. So the brown is the road and the orange is the lightning rail. So I created First Tower to be, and I don't know that this actually is in the written lore. I created First Tower as sort of the Disneyland of Sharn, as a historical, comical, over dramatized version of the founding of Sharn, with interpretive centers, with like construction examples of all of these very cartoony places that you could see, almost like some of the different lands in Disneyland. If any of you have been to Disneyland, it is very it's a tourist attraction. It's like Sharn Light. If you were to visit Sharn or visit First Tower, you would have an idea of how the First Tower was built in the entire city of Sharn, and it has nothing but a tour. There's no actual residents. There are no. I mean, it really is. Everything is behind the scenes. There is a whole group that runs it, and it's sort of like if you want to see the historical beginnings of Sharn, you go to First Tower and you spend a weekend there to marvel at the wonder that is Sharn, which you can see in the distance, in this giant beautiful valley, and you can see that the towers go up into the clouds, and it's just amazing. It's sort of like an introduction, a very curated introduction to the city of Sharn. So I had them understand that there wasn't anything significant there, but as they passed through, they said, "Oh, we're going to keep going." And Sharn itself has several ways to get in. All of the rich people fly in on airships. Some people come by boat through the Dagger River. There is an area called the Hilt in the map that is a giant, big estuary, big, sort of delta on the map. A lot of people sail in. Several people come in from the Lightning Rail. There's a giant station called Terminus Station. There's also a road that takes you in there. The road is usually sort of the more common way to come in. It's for merchants and people that can't afford any other way to bring their goods in, and usually are lower class. And it's like the lines are a lot longer if you're coming in by foot. The lines are a little bit longer, but not so long if you're coming in by lightning rail and boat. And then they're very short if you're coming in, by airship. But obviously, if you pay more money, you can get better reception in Sharn. So our group of adventurers were coming in by cart, and I can't. Did you guys have disguises, or did you? At this point, you were unknown, just kind of coming in.
No, we had Enceladus. We had Enceladus driving the cart up front.
Oh, right.
Yeah. And the rest of us were kind of like.
It was covered wagons.
Yeah, we were in the back, covered up.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And like we're waiting in line. Huh?
We were trying to look inconspicuous. Like,
yeah, right.
yeah.
And there was like this black robed figure that was like walking kind of like up and down the line.
Yep.
And he was like trying to get a good look at us. And I don't know, Tam like wanted to get out and stuff, but I have written down the group insists I sit down and shut up. So I don't know what that meant about my role playing at the time.
Well, so Tam was a very curious character, and there were a lot of curious things that Tam wanted to do. That
very ADD, always up and scattering around. Couldn't sit still, just like me.
Calm down.
There are a lot of things that we didn't want to learn while waiting at the border in Sharn.
So he's trying to get a good look at us, and Enceladus starts talking to him. And of course, he doesn't recognize Enceladus, this man. But it turns out that this robed figure was Zep, the gnome, Orla's cousin, disguised as a human.
It actually was Zep and Mole.
Right. Double.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But Enceladus recognized them, but of course they don't recognize Enceladus because they're not looking for a red-headed man; they're looking for a red-headed woman.
Exactly right.
Like one was on the other's shoulders, right? And then they put like a big, coat on to sort of disguise themselves.
Two gnomes in a trench coat.
Yeah.
So Zep tells us the 4 half-orcs up ahead are like checking IDs and they're looking for us. They're from the Miners Guild. And he says, "Hey, so did Tad give you your disguises and fake IDs?"
Right.
Crap.
And then you had to admit that you lost Tam, and he couldn't help you.
Not Tam, Tad.
Or Tad, right.
Why every time we enter Sharn, we need fake IDs to get into this city? It's like we're a bunch of teenagers trying to get into a bar.
I mean, yeah, I don't think you've ever been legitimate citizens, so I think that's the answer to that observation there. You've always been pursued by someone, but yeah, you're right. There were orcs up ahead trying to check, and you assumed for the sake of the Miners Guild to find you guys because you had just you have evaded them since Zolenberg when you escaped Zolenberg. Yeah. Animal House.
So he gives us a tip to head to the Portly Bear Tavern. He thinks that's a spot where we might be able to get some IDs from.
Yep, in Zilspar.
Yeah.
Right, and so if you pull the map up again, Jake.
Map is open.
Zilspar is this town right here to the east of Sharn. So it's sort of like if you naturally continued to follow the road out of First Tower, you would make it to Zilspar. And so basically Zep and Mole, which you didn't see but you assumed, was there. He kind of poked his face out. But they told you, get out of line now, go secure yourself some fake IDs and a way into Sharn. So you headed to Zilspar.
We headed to Zilspar, and we had a couple like choices. We could go off on our own, or we could like travel with this group.
That's right.
And there was some debate, but we ended up traveling with this group of people.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the middle of the night, Occam had to roll a d20.
That's right, because it was a full moon. That was the reason. And what happened?
You rolled a 2, so you rolled a 2.
Oh no!
And in the middle of the night. In the middle of the quiet night, surrounded by people, Occam awakes from a nightmare and wolfs out.
Wolfs out.
That's right.
So one thing you guys need to know about some races in Eberron, they do not require sleep. One of those races is a lot of elves and Warforged. So they kind of go into a meditation where they're still mostly awake, mostly aware, but just meditating. And so Celestine had made the promise to Occam that he would meditate and watch over him, just to make sure that nothing bad happened. So Celestine was the first alarm to let everybody know that things were gonna go south for this encampment.
Celestine first kind of like his first job was to protect everyone against Occam, and you had said that with the last encounter, but that was sort of the thing that you jumped right into and said this is what I'm committed to doing, and so that meant 24/7 watch on Occam and his wolf nature. So anyway, so do you remember what?
We ended up, we had to take him down to help him out, and and we were resistant, but Celestine's like, look, he's gonna have a rough day tomorrow. Take him down. That's Celestine's words.
Yep. Nice.
And he kind of, let's see, he turns back into a minotaur, and then back into a wolf, and no, actually. We all actually, after we decided to hit him, we all hit him hard, and he turned into a minotaur, and then that was it. It was over pretty quick. Yeah. But we were still dealt with this situation of we can't control our companion here.
Yep.
On Occam's part, he was feeling pretty bad about the whole thing himself, and he had a lot of mounting guilt over his responsibility for safety in the party and being his job to heal people, help them get better. He's not really one to deal damage. He could deal damage when he needed to, but his character was to heal and be a healer and sort of restore peace to a group, and he lost that control of that ability, he felt like. So there was a great bit of mounting guilt going on with him.
Yeah, it seemed like there was a division in roles too, because the healer also hurt bad too. Really was a force when you were out of control, which was hard for Occam as a character to say, yes, my devotion is to the good that I can do through healing and through protection, and also I'm going to hurt you really bad. So.
And he wasn't like a normal sized humanoid. He's a minotaur, so he's definitely a big dude. So when he wolfs out, knows that he's a force to be reckoned with, and that's a problem.
Yeah. I don't remember, Doug, at this point. Was this the point when you approached me and said, Occam is in a tough spot. I don't know if I want to continue with this character?
I think we had been talking about it leading up to getting to the Gate of Sharn anyway, and so coming out to this part was a part of the plan for Occam to make some hard decisions.
Also, just so happened that in Sharn they were doing the hunt, weren't they?
Yeah. So the hunt is an event every year that the Silver Flame puts on, because the Silver Flame hates everything that has to do with lycanthropy. They're sort of the witch hunters of the world. I think that's the best. Like. They are silver in their name. They want to destroy all things that are anti life and beauty and in their eyes. And they put on this thing called the Hunt every year, where they do a mock hunt and they try to find lycanthropes. They beat the bushes, and they even someone dresses up like a werewolf, and they do a mock hunt. And just to show their, just to reinforce their views on how they don't want to have anything other than purity and the Silver Flame in the world. I think I was hoping in introducing lycanthropy in the game that there would be some level of acceptance for those that were different. I knew that the Silver Flame absolutely hated werewolves, and I kind of wanted to introduce it into the party. I didn't know what the end impact would be. I did follow the book as far as the the moon frenzy and what the effects were and how often you had to roll to see if you weren't affected by lycanthropy, and it did seem to be too much for the party and for Doug's character to handle. So Doug approached me and said, I'm not really sort of, really, connecting with this character. I'd like to try and, do something different. And so had that in mind at this point in the campaign. unbeknownst to any of the other characters in the game. And so, as a DM, my job was to try and meet all of the needs of my characters. And so Doug had raised a pretty significant, desire to, to connect with a different character and not with Occam. And so I was trying hard to figure out how to write his character out of the story in a way that fit, the feel and the rhythm of the story. So anyway, so we had the middle of the night incident, and you guys were able to subdue him really quickly. But I feel like everyone was feeling the liability that Occam was.
Drained, yeah.
Very drained. Yeah, very much like we're pulled in several directions trying to keep this guy from harming us.
So eventually, the next day, I think we get to the Zilspar, to the Portly Bear Tavern. This dwarf comes in, this drunken dwarf. He's just belligerent. This is Schooner, the bar owner.
Yep.
And eventually, and who we're supposed to talk to about these fake IDs, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And we finally get him like out of his bar and like are gonna try to sober him up. And he gets around the corner and he's like instantly sober.
Yeah.
I thought it was a really cool NPC idea that this bartender like has his persona when he's in his bar with his patrons. He's in it, but he's with it the whole time. He's tracking everything.
Yeah.
So anyway, he has an idea. He wants us to trade for our IDs, and the price that we have to pay is we get to be the bait. For I think the Miners Guild, of course. And we do this job. We go out. We are the bait. We crush. We knock some heads together.
Yeah, it wasn't for the Miners Guild. It was he was trying to reestablish a trading route to the east, Zilspar, and that was it was being affected by some bandits. So you guys were to be, sort of put on your bonnets and sit in a cart and look to be someone that was, some sort of merchant that was moving items from Zilspar to the east. And it wasn't Miners Guild. You might have suspected that, but it wasn't Miners Guild. It was just road rogues that were trying to disrupt the trade route. And he said, "Hey, if you clear up this trade route, I think it'll be good because I can make you some fake IDs and get you a way in, but I need you to help me out too."
The significant parts about this fight were, number one, Occam got hit, wolfed out. Rook actually got hit and went down.
Mm-hmm.
And Enceladus was finally forced to activate his Rod of Chaos, which he had not done since becoming a man.
Yeah.
Which was like in our time, in real time, it was over a month. And several battles, like we skimmed over a couple of battles and encounters and things here. And Enceladus, I don't know, what were you consciously like afraid to use it, or what was the deal?
I feel like there was a time like another battle we had where there was like an ice giant. I don't know if we'd encountered that up to this point.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I started to realize, especially after like that, dust storm, I'm like, well, anything can happen here, and I don't know. I think I was afraid of making things worse, like in an encounter.
I think if I recall, your MO was to only use it if we were on the winning side, because you were afraid that there was very likely that something bad was going to happen.
Yeah.
So you would kind of save it for like the end of an encounter, or if you thought it was,
if
you thought it was going to be an easy one.
Which is like that's funny because like if we're losing and desperate, that's when we might need the power boost. But you did end up using it.
Make it much worse, like that's what I was afraid of.
And what you rolled was number 43, Stone Weapon, which turned a downed rook's weapon to stone. He didn't know it. He was knocked unconscious at the time, but his weapon turned to stone.
Yeah.
But then we finished up the fight. And then we head back into town to kind of
Didn't
like
Rook
go back
have
to the
to roll a
tavern.
save after that too?
He
Like
did.
it
Yeah.
started turning. It spread to his hand.
Yeah, well, he was like I wrote down that as we were packing up, Rook's hand starts to bother him ever since his weapon was turned to stone.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of the significant.
Right. To go a little bit meta right now. First of all, like this was when I was starting to experience with sort of like role playing as encounters or puzzles as encounters, because fighting for me it wasn't boring, but it was pretty predictable. Everyone sort of had at this point in the campaign knew what they could do, knew what they could fight, knew what to employ at every instant, and I'd already given two of the characters that liked to be min-maxers some extremely powerful weapons. So I was struggling on some level with trying to put together encounters that were really challenging and fun and not super threatening for a lot of people, because I had to put really difficult enemies in the way of those two beautiful weapons. But also I had to make it not feel like they could pound and destroy everything in a moment. And so I was experimenting with non-encounter or non-fight encounters where we had role play, where we had puzzles, where we had sort of like diplomacy check sort of thing. But also you guys were realizing that that the Rod of Chaos was a super big liability, and we were also coming to the level part of fourth edition where you reach level 11, which is when your first 10 levels are heroic levels, and you're good. Maybe in your hometown you're recognized, but the world at large doesn't know who you are. But once you reach level 11, you have sort of reached this other path called the Paragon Path in fourth edition. And you pick a direction that you want your life to go. You pick the thing you want to be known for outside of your hometown, a little bit larger than what you are before. And I had already been talking with Jake, who plays Rook, about what his Paragon path would be. And we had sort of landed on the Paragon path called Self-Forged, which is for an artificer, which is a magic mechanic, a path that would help, like he would be creating new limbs for himself. And so I wanted to meld the idea of this chaotic rod that could do absolutely anything at my beck and call, and this Paragon path that Rook wanted to, that we had sort of worked on together, as a self-forged, which is someone that needed to create his own limbs or become more like a warforged, And so I had this beautiful, like, infinitely powerful rod, and I had this interesting Paragon path, and I wanted to connect the two. And so on that particular roll of the Rod of Chaos, I was the chaos factor, and I made that happen. I did not allow the dice to do anything other than create a stone weapon in his hands, because I wanted the stone weapon to spread to his hand, to also make him have to deal with that later in the story. And so that's the only time
I never knew that
I have fudged that roll for the Rod of Chaos or the story.
And that's how he lost his hand, right?
Yes, and that is how eventually he lost.
I felt so guilty about that. You did that. Oh my God. I felt so guilty that I destroyed his hand and he had to replace it.
I still think that it's
nothing
appropriate.
to do with chance, did it?
I think it's still appropriate roleplay for you to be completely guilty, because for that moment there, he's taking the DM screen down, but honestly, Enceladus still doesn't know that wasn't entirely your fault.
Still doesn't know.
This was, by the way, in March of 2017. So 4 years plus later, West has been dealing with this guilt. This is good. This is healing for us.
I feel like I wanted you guys to really know, like, the tools that I had, and have at my disposal. The Rod of Chaos has only been used once as a tool for the story to be moved forward. All the other times, it's been truly a D100, truly a 1% chance of 100 different options. This was the only time that I manipulated it to do something story-wise that I wanted it to do. And I was very glad to have that tool, but I also was very cautious about using it because of the amazing power that it could have. But I got the inspiration for the stone weapon and stone hand from a Terry Brooks book. There was one, I forget which book it was. It was maybe one of the prequels in the Shannara series. A character similar to Tad reached into a hole and got bit by something that started to turn him into stone. And I thought that was a really cool idea. It slowly turned him into stone, and he eventually was stuck there with his hand in a hole, and a complete stone figure stuck in a hole. And I thought, I've always had that thought of a really cool idea for a character. So for Rook, having him, theoretically bit by the Rod of Chaos here, and having his limb be, tight to start, and then eventually, turn to stone was I liked that image. So anyway,
I think it's really funny that right as Enceladus got a little scared off using her rod, it took over a month for her to use it, and when she finally used it, I can just see DM going, "Oh my gosh, thank you! Finally, stone weapon. I've been holding on to this stone weapon. It is."
So I didn't feel that way because I'm very, very much ready for anything. So I have a lot of stuff on deck, and if it wasn't the right time, I wouldn't have forced it. And I was really excited that I had the opportunity. And again, that was the only time I manipulated the Rod of Chaos to my bidding. All the rest of the times have been chaos. So,
well, and that's what I was just noticing about this next session, because we went back to Schooner, and he says, "Hey, great, here's your IDs. They're fake IDs. They're House Civis, but they're not notarized. We can get them fake notarized in Zolenberg in 2 days by in a caravan. We can go ourselves. It would take 1 day, or we could go to Sharn to pay someone there to do it. We could stay in town that night and do a fight club, or we could do the job." So you listed 6 different things we could do, which is way different than in the beginning of the campaign when it was and I wasn't there for that, but it was you guys said you were learning, and it was a little bit more railroad. Hey, you could do this thing. Do you want to do it?
Right.
And here
the only option.
Here there's 6 things that we could have done.
So again, a little bit of meta-analysis. That was I had just encountered the concept of railroading a party, which I was really sensitive to at that point. I didn't know what that meant before, but what that means, railroading means, on a railroad you have one way to go, and a DM can easily send a party in a direction and give them no other options. There's on a railroad you can't turn. There's no place to go other than the track, and so I was wanting to create more of a choice rather than anything else. This choice of okay, we have 5 different things we can do, and I legitimately planned out 5 different options you can do. I still would love for you guys at some point to take up my Fight Club option, because I planned out a really cool fist fight option where you don't die, you just get knocked out and you lose money because you're betting. This whole scenario, I completely tuned to your character, and dialed back the different stats, and kind of I made 5 legitimate options for you, and you picked one of them, which was great, because that's all. I was expecting you to pick one, and you picked the job that he wanted you to do.
Yeah, and it's funny because we maybe weren't used to this many decisions, because it says we debate our options greatly, and then later, and at great length. And we finally decided to take the job, go to the Cove, but we decided to be sneaky, not to kill anything, and we go and we do this job, and it was another cool big fight with the ship and a cove and mist, and we thought
that
we
was
did
an awesome encounter.
we thought we did really good. And we go back to Schooner to report on this job, and he was like, "Wait, you just went and you saw something, and then you came back and reported to me. You didn't do the job." And like, I think because there was this big fight and we kind of freaked out a little bit, and so we ended up having to do the encounter kind of twice, like,
Because if
or
you
at least
recall, we were
over a
fighting
couple
fighting
sessions.
ghosts, weren't we?
Right.
Yeah.
And this was Celestine's time to shine because they were weak to radiant damage.
That's right.
So
and Celestine is
it was
radiant damage dealer as a paladin.
he's a radiant damage machine. So it was an absolute blast. We're like, oh, we got this. We killed these ghosts. Let's head back to Schooner.
Yep.
Wrong. Go back. Try again.
So before we continue, I need a bathroom break. I don't know if any of you want to fill in with like what's like backstory or anything like that with the character. I'm going to be a minute, and I will be right back.
What I have written down for the next session is, how could he not be disappointed? Which is what Schooner was apparently pretty disappointed with us. Go back the next day. It's funny how like focused you can get on the combat or one part of the story, and you miss out on the whole bigger picture or forget what the goal was. Like, what? Why did
Now,
we come here
if I
again?
recall, we were pretty nervous about getting on the ship, weren't we? So we ended up sending the puppet, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
I
right.
remember
Well, wasn't there
that.
kind of a mist or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, it
We were
was.
afraid that if we got on the ship, it would take off with us on it. So
Yeah.
we sent out the we have a
The little marionette.
little marionette that is a wireless marionette. So we
Yeah.
sent out the puppet to go check out the boat and to make sure that it wasn't going to take off with us on it.
So we get
Somehow
through
we
this
thought that would
fog.
work.
We see this on the side of the ship. It's named the Serena, and we're all like whispering and quiet and scared. And Celestine yells, "Ahoy!"
What did I yell?
Celestine, "Ahoy!"
Ahoy.
Yep.
Ahoy.
You just go for it. But there's no echo at all. And like Celestine starts to climb up, and we're just forced to follow him. We had no choice. And there's like a big crate in there, and it's filled with stuff from Zindrick. It's like an ancient relic from the time of giants. It's usually filled with dead bodies and sacrificed bodies to protect a corpse. And then like these earthquakes started right as we got up next to it. The whole place started shaking, and a bunch of spirits came out of the box, screaming super loud. Which one of them was probably Celestine getting really excited that he got to fight the spirits.
Yeah, ghosts. So one thing to note about Celestine at this point, yes, he did have a very good weapon, but kind of one of Celestine's things is he is cursed with bad dice, or at least I am. He misses. He misses a lot. It does kind of make up for it though, because he sucks in a ton of damage that the rest of the party does not have to deal with. So he kind of deals damage indirectly by taking damage for other people, so they don't have to worry about staying alive. They can just deal DPS. However, when Celestine does hit, or at least with the Icebound Full Blade in its original form, the only thing that would be left was Pink Mist. Because it was usually a critical, and there were a lot of modifiers on there that made the criticals absolutely insane. So when we talk about it being an overpowered weapon, we mean like it's not very consistent, but when it hit, it was basically a death blow.
And again, that's, I mean, I think I said it before on our last stream, but that was a little bit of my inexperience, not knowing how to balance like unique magic items very well. Because I created both Shard and the Icebound Full Blade like I created those. I added a lot of features to them that probably shouldn't. I mean, not shouldn't, because they were really good for story, but that may
I
have
thought they
been
were
modified in a different way to not make them so incredibly overpowered when they hit.
And Shard was kind of on the other end of the spectrum where it would literally always hit.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, and control the enemies. That was the big problem with it. Could just kite
Right.
everyone, keep them.
For sure.
So we kind of dealt with these banshees. Occam got dominated though. We like ended up losing our map. We had to do all this stuff. Kind of got whooped, and ended up just kind of retreating. Head back to the bar. Schooner's like, no, you didn't do what I needed. I needed something. He needed a manifest or something. So we decided to go back and dump this box into the ocean and bring the manifest back to Schooner. But we have to get the boat, the ship, out of the cove. And so we discussed options for getting the box out of the cove. During this time, Rook's hand also was turning to stone. So we talk about like that's becoming more and more of a thing. And we get there right at the beginning of the fight. Occam just wolfs out right away, and eventually goes down. And we end up being a little bit more in control of the fight this time. Get the manifest and the box and everything kind of where we want it. Enceladus, Occam eventually turns back into a Minotaur. Seems like he's kind of in control of himself. And decides to use his onyx steed, his piece of loot, to haul this box on the water out of the cove. And he just like charges out into the water. He's got perfect control of this thing.
Because the Onyx Steed, if I recall, it could walk on water, couldn't it?
Yep.
It can run on land, water. There's no obstacles for it. There's no difficult terrain. It just goes.
Yep.
Awesome steed.
Yep.
So yeah, he ends up. We put the box in the dinghy, and he's hauling the dinghy out of the cove. It's a narrow passage leading out of the cove. By this point, we had been setting things on fire. The boat wasn't on fire. He peels off to the right and out of view, and we're watching for a while to see how long it takes him to come back. And we keep waiting, and we do hear a howl. We search the boat. We read the captain's log, and we're kind of like picking ourselves up after the fight. We still don't see Occam. We get in a small rowboat and we start to follow him out there because we heard that howl. And we kind of take the same path out of the cove. We hang a right, and we arrive at a beach and walk for a while. And eventually, getting all goosebumpy and emotionally in my voice. Jeez. Eventually, we find Occam's backpack with a note pinned to Occam's backpack, and Occam has left us a letter.
I have that letter. So a little bit of
emotions.
A little bit of. I had talked to Doug about, we had been talking about taking his character out, and how we wanted to do it, and it just so happened that the session before I asked him to write a farewell letter, an actual farewell letter, which he did just beautifully. I mean, the writing is beautiful. I'll read the script to you, but it's a legitimate, like parchment, reenactment, letter. And I think I gave this prop to you guys in the moment and had one of you read it. But it's a letter that was found in his backpack as you kind of found it washed up on the beach.
We made Doug read it, I believe.
Oh yeah,
voice.
Like in his voice, yeah. So you were hearing that. Okay. It says, "My comrades, my friends, it has been apparent to me for some time that I'm no longer an asset to our fellowship, but have become a dangerous detriment. I'm unable to function at my highest or personally guarantee our safeguarding in our travels any further. Thus, I have mounted upon my onyx steed and stole away northward to Arcanix. Whether or not I will make it has yet to be seen. For our own sakes, you must not follow." And he has "must not follow" underlined. "Be brave and shed no tears for me. Our adventures have been among the finest of my life. Go to Sharn, seek the trail of Orla. I suspect the ring at House Cannith may reveal fruit. Keep your eyes open for the wizards, for I suspect their needs dovetail our own. Your paths should cross, let's see here. Your paths should cross again in the future. Celestine, stay strong and true to yourself and the fellowship. Enceladus, be wise with your powers and your identity. Rook, hopefully you will find health in Sharn and journey homeward someday. Tam, trust the intuition of your friends and the fellowship. Resist the urge to overthink. Myself, I will seek healing and hope to see you again someday, so I may heal again. Through strength and compassion, Occam. So obviously, Occam had some foresight in his illness and his desire to seek healing and to kind of not be a liability to the party. And you found that and his backpack full of, I think some of the goodies that you guys had before were in that backpack. And you
Things
kind of
like
took.
that. Yeah, and Occam, his hope was to go to Arcanix, knowing that it was, it was a preeminent healing school, hoping to find a solution for the moon frenzy.
So the other really important part is, Occam, had you at this point shared any of your backstory with any of the adventurers?
He was he didn't
I don't.
talk too much,
I
and he
don't
just
remember. Yeah.
did share a little bit about his background. He doesn't know much. He was kind of like a foundling and raised by human parents up near Arcanix, and so naturally attended there as well, but was drawn toward healing anyway. And so that's where he received his training. He always kind of wondered where he came from. Minotaurs have this, sort of have this soul question deep within themselves about, and it has to do with the labyrinth. And Jeremiah, you would recognize this as being one as well. That there's always this big question about the maze of life. That where is your place in the labyrinth? Where is the center of the maze? If you can make it there, to truly find yourself, there's always this thing, and so he felt like there was a lot of pieces of the puzzle missing for him because he was a foundling. He didn't know where he came from. He didn't know who his parents were. His real parents. He had a lot of love growing up with the parents who did raise him, but being obviously sticking out like a thumb in that family, he wanted to know more, but there was just no forthcoming answers for him. He felt probably like he belonged for the first time in his life in this group, as this group was pretty diverse, in some ways sort of misfits, and he felt like that kind of for him where he could fit in and do something, you know, he really stuck out much until he Moon Frenzy, and then that much more so like he stuck out, and that he was becoming more of a detriment when all he ever wanted to do was be an asset and a really good friend and heal. Like that's all he wanted to do. So there was a lot that was confusing for him at the end of the day. He just really felt like he needed to make some hard decisions and try and either get away from people that he loved because he might hurt them or kill them, and that he also needed to go to a place where he could hopefully find the healing solution that may not exist for Moon Frenzy.
Yeah. So Arcanix is his hometown. If you can pull up the map, I can splash Arcanix real quick.
Map is live.
Okay.
Let me zoom out here.
Okay.
Okay.
Trying to remember where Arcanix actually is. I don't know if it's on this map. I thought it was south. Is it south of Lake Bray? Like right there?
Yeah, it's in Under. I think it's south.
Or is it
South Lake Galifar?
Oh yeah. There it is. I forgot. Lake Galifar is huge. It's Arcanix is south of Lake Galifar. Right there. Yeah, I knew it was on the. I think it was on the map. And it's sort of like a university town, but the whole university is floating. Like it's all it's a bunch of like wizard towers that are sort of floating above the university or above the city, and the city itself is set up to support the university. And Arcanix will make a big entrance later in the campaign, but that's Occam's hometown, and that's where he said in his letter where he's going to go and pursue healing for this lycanthropy. And to date, in Eberron, there's no known cure for lycanthropy that anyone really knows of. I allude to a cure later on in the campaign, and we talk about it a little bit. But at this point, there's not like a, hey, let's make up this tincture for you and all of a sudden you'll be fine. There's not a known cure for lycanthropy at this point.
Silver weapons, 100% effective.
Yes, that's a cure upon death. So anyway,
silver pills.
Here, take this silver pill and you'll be perfectly fine.
It burns.
Right. Anyway, that gives a little bit of context for where like Occam left. That was, I think, first time. The first time in the story. Well, it was the first time in the story when I felt like it was a union of minds that actually made a beautiful story without a lot of effort. I think that Doug, taking that initiative in the moment to summon his steed wasn't anything I told him to do. He grabbed this like ghoul or not this ghost producing box and just decided to take it out on his own. And I, in the moment, made that his moment to exit the party. It was very organic. Not, it was one of those things where the opportunity was taken very much in the moment and not planned beforehand. And it turned out to be a really emotional, very cool experience for everybody. I mean, I think we were all just shocked at what happened. Even me, we were really excited and shocked about what happened and how it worked. And the fact that he had that letter preloaded just made the reveal even. It's sort of like the magic trick where everything absolutely happened perfect. The audience, who was the party, was just sort of like, what just happened? And Doug was able to very gracefully and heroically leave the party as Occam for the moment.
And as a player we didn't know anything about it, we figure kind of like, oh, well, his character is sick and he's, but it's Doug's character. We're going to go find a cure for him, like we've got we've got plot armor. You know, where nothing bad can really happen to us.
Right. Right.
And it was like definitely eye opening and very.
Yeah.
I don't know, it was emotional for sure.
It was sad.
I do remember the organicness of that moment, and I remember, the assignment to write the letter, having it ready. I remember showing it to you, Justin, said this is great. And
Yep.
I think it was just about looking for an opening.
Yep.
And how this encounter just created it. The ghost box was creating all kinds of just havoc. And I think I sort of just remember grabbing it, getting on the steed, going, driving out toward the water, and sort of just eyeballing it with you, and you sort of just knew exactly what was going to happen, and it just sort of worked.
Nice.
I think I slipped you a note or something like that, or I sent you a text or something that said this is the time, or like this is when Occam will leave, or something. I think I slipped you a note. I don't exactly remember. There was a little bit of communication, but it was sort of like we had already preloaded the exit, and this was like the perfect time to transition the music to, this somber leaving sort of tone. And it happened organically, and it also was intentional at the same time.
I think one that I really liked about this moment was, I think it set a new tone for our group, saying that there are deadly and permanent consequences to this world. That are, that there is no such thing as plot armor, that bad things can happen, and there might not be a cure for it, and hard decisions might have to be made in order to be responsible. I liked how that sort of just worked all together, and like you said, it came together for a really neat moment that
it did.
Still affects the party, and will affect us later as we get to it.
For sure.
I think it was something. It was shocking to see something as simple as a bite that ends up killing off a whole character.
From a were-rat.
Yeah, from a were-rat, and thinking that, we'll just find a cure because there's got to be one. I mean, it just has to be out there. You just have to find it. And even up to the point until he left, we were just gonna continue to just find a cure. We knew that it was a problem, what was happening, but we weren't just going to let him go. I wasn't really expecting him to just ride off into the sunset like that. And so it was a little shocking because I just assumed at some point we could, fit that into the story. Like, he doesn't die after all, or he doesn't turn into a werewolf. We
get our Occam back, right? We get our Occam back, right?
In the actual disease part of 4th edition, he could have rolled his way to health. There is a very, very slim chance, but he could have very easily rolled his way to defeating Moon Frenzy.
Remember
that. And as the rolls were going, it wasn't looking like he was going to defeat Moon Frenzy. He continued to slip further into, him wolfing out more often and being more of a liability to the party. I didn't think from the very beginning, because that was months previous that you got bit. I didn't think that would be the way that your character would leave, because you hadn't asked me at that point, hey, I'd kind of like to try another type of character or whatever. But it ended up being, because of your roles and because of how that kind of played out in the group, it ended up being sort of a way to exit, and it happened to be heroic and graceful, the exit. So.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed playing Occam. He had some really great abilities. He could off tank. He had some really strong healing abilities that were just fantastic. His presence, I think he just had a presence about him that was sort of like The Rock, I guess, just sort of just really big, and but that he was a kind of a good guy.
Right.
Awesome tattoos too. Remember the labyrinth tattoos all over him? Those were rad.
All over his back.
At some point, we're gonna have to do a session where we bring out our minis that we've mostly Justin has painted, because some of these characters, Gorth and all these NPCs have awesome minis to go with them.
What would be really good,
and also the fire elemental.
right? For I think for our website or for spots where we can post pictures, what I'm going to do is take really good high definition pictures of some of these key NPCs or enemies that we've encountered, and actually be able to show what they look like. That includes some of the characters that have been in the group and have left or are still still part of it. We'll do a little write-up on them sort of thing, and it'll be more of a presentation rather than an in the moment, because my webcam is not good enough to show the detail of what we've done at this point. So I'll take some high def pictures and we can post them, and then we'll be able to kind of put those up on our social. So anyway,
we could put them up on the website. I was actually hoping we could do that.
Yeah, for sure.
So all this took place in April of 2017, and Doug, just really nice job, even though your character left, coming back, not having a character to play all these years. Good job.
Yeah.
No character. What a guy. So we went back to Schooners. He said, good job, finally. Nice try on your second try. He gave us our IDs. They had different names on them. So like Rook's his ID said his name was Pimbly Nimbus. And Tam's ID was Nathaniel Latharind. Celestine was named Wall. And Celadus was named Francis Baltus. Fundus? I don't know.
Francis?
We didn't pick these names. Occam. We had an ID for Occam. Grimhoof. Gorehorn.
Yeah.
I like that.
Gorehorn.
I forgot about these names.
Those were all names that I made up, but yes.
Yeah.
Pimbly Nimbus is there.
So in addition, Schooner is going to smuggle us into Sharn. And so we're going to get smuggled into this warehouse, wait till sundown, and then sneak out. There's going to be guards around. He's going to load us in a thing with a bunch of cadavers. We have to get in this like big crate, basically. Nobody will find us there. We made an agenda for when we got to Sharn. Number 1, we need to heal Rook's hand first. That was our first order of business. Number 2, and Enceladus had some options that she knew of, because Enceladus is from Sharn. Mm-hmm. And so she gave us a couple of options of places we could go to heal Rook's hand.
Yeah, there were 3 options.
Yeah, nice job, Enceladus. Glad you knew about these people. The second thing is we needed to go to House Cannith.
Because you had that ring. You had that ring from the Forbidden Forge.
Yep. Wanted to tell them about that illegal forge operating that we shut down. Third, Zep, Deathgate, Heroes Quarter, Orla search. That's the note I have. I guess we needed to go to Deathgate to find Orla info. Fourth thing, when you're in Sharn, you got to go shopping. Fifth thing, Tam's phone home. I wanted my character, Tam, to send a letter back to his spire to check in on the family and check in on his story. So we got loaded up into the crates. We got smuggled into Sharn. We wait till night. We exit the crates. And we're in Sharn.
Yep.
Just like that. So simple. They just have to get smuggled in with cadavers.
So what happens is, these cadavers are people who were contracted to be buried in Sharn. Like they're either rich or they're relatives of the rich or people that really needed to be buried in Sharn. And so you were crated up with these dead bodies that smelled terrible, that were supposed to be a part of a sort of a shipping convoy, because Schooner was all about the shipping lanes. He was all about shipping, whether it was boat, whether it was airship, whether it was like wagon or cart. He was all about shipping. And he said, I figured out a way to get you in. He puts you in these crates, caskets of sorts with dead bodies that are supposed to be buried in Sharn, like contractually supposed to be buried. You find yourself in a warehouse, like this holding, you make it through the equivalent of customs going through Sharn, and you find yourself in a warehouse. And this warehouse isn't just, like this dusty old place that there is, there's no issues. There are guard dogs that are like there are these constructs that are walking around that are protecting the goods that are stored in the warehouse. And as you make your way out of these crates full of dead bodies, you encounter these, like guard dog constructs, and you have to fight them. And I don't know if you guys remember that fight.
I think I remember it very vaguely.
Yeah, it was over really quickly because I did not balance it very well. But you destroyed these constructs that were sort of like guard dog constructs, and you heard that there was a disruption, like there were actual legitimate guards coming towards you after the guard dogs had been defeated, and you made it out, and without having to fight more.
Yeah, actually, I just read here. So Celestine just distracts him. He throws his shield and makes a noise, and we sneak out.
That's right.
I remember that.
Celestine looks at the map that we have, memorize it, gives it back. I guess he didn't trust Tam to keep the map, so he wanted a copy for himself.
Right.
And then we decide to head to Everbright and the healer that's there. Do you remember the three? There was 3 healers, and we picked one of them, and I don't remember the other 2.
So the 3 healers, I don't remember what their names are, but the 3 healers are just sort of the tropes were the like Sawbones orc would just make it happen, would default to cutting off limbs rather than actually trying to heal what's wrong with you. There was this very middle of the road, sort of well-respected healer that didn't take a lot of clients, but also had a very high success rate. And then there was the healer to the stars, who was more interested in like cosmetic surgery than anything else. Very, very much would lift and tuck before they would actually like heal who you are. And
Vikias knows that guy.
I admit to railroading at this point because I knew you wouldn't pick either of the extreme options, and you would pick the center option.
I was gonna ask, like, what would you have done? But so no spoilers, but I was very curious.
Good question.
So you threw those out there knowing we would pick. So the one we ended up picking, we ended up finding this guy. His name is tucked back in an alleyway. A big wooden door. It's this guy, Phidias Mazarak. Phidias Mazarak is the one that we picked all on our own.
So it's basic human psychology,
Gosh.
You take the 80% in the center, and you delete the top.
Too predictable.
I'm so impressed.
So, that was movie magic at its greatest.
That's really cool. Why, you ask, viewer? Why? Well, you'll find out. Keep listening.
That's right. So
yeah, go ahead.
Right. You made your way to this very, modest, nondescript, middle of the tower sort of like place that, was very much, there's a big, red cross on the shingle out front, very legitimate, very clean. And you walked in, and there was a young elf receptionist that said, "Oh yeah, please come in. It looks like you're hurt. We'll just, and she sort of ushered you into this area and laid Rook down on this table, and there was a big, curtains that kind of surrounded everything, and Rook laid down, and his arm was kind of laying down on this this healing table that was already turning to stone, kind of up to maybe his elbow. It was immobile, completely immobile, and he wasn't able to like bend any of it, and so all of the whole group is sort of like kind of looking at him, sort of he's the center on this table, sort of kind of writhing in pain, and then from this curtain, this black curtain, comes this glowing, like bluish, glowing, ghostly scorpion, and it starts to like crawl up his stone arm, and it starts to like, do this funny like, healing with its little pinchers and kind of like, like psychosurgery sort of thing, and like this little, nipping and tucking and connecting and everything, and Rook is sort of feeling this like, oh, this is interesting, and then I think I remember Rook gets really impatient at this point, whips out a dagger and just starts cutting his own arm off, like just gashing deep above the stone, like where the actual stone is affecting his arm. And he's just starting to cut and cut and cut right at his elbow, and he ends up taking his whole like forearm and hand off completely. And he has this bloody stump. I mean, it's not really super bloody because he's already undead, but it's not bleeding. But he has this stump of an arm that's just kind of the end here. He's kind of in this other minded area where he's just had enough of not being able to use this stone hand that's just completely broken. And do you guys remember how the doctor revealed himself in that moment?
I don't.
The
great healer.
Wasn't he behind a curtain or something and
Yep.
had to come out? But I don't remember anything more special than that. Like, what do you do?
I'm trying to remember myself. He the scorpion was still present, and he kind of showed up, and I think he showed up. Did he show up as a drow?
Oh, I think that the spirit companion disappeared, and then he emerged from back behind the curtain, and he looked like an elf.
Yeah. Okay. So that was really important part is this glowing scorpion that was on Rook's arm disappeared, and then from the curtains comes this elf, very normal looking elf, kind of well dressed, well buttoned up, kind of goth looking, but not not to the point where he's super angsty and emo, but he's very put together, very like
black and gray leather,
very put together, very like, I don't want to say like I don't know, he's very Victorian, very appropriately lacy and just very put together. So he shows up and kind of introduces himself as as Phidias Mazarak, and I don't really remember how it went, but Rook now had taken his own arm off, which was part of his Paragon path to being the Self-Forged, because I was going to have him create his own prosthetic arm, which would have been this huge power fist that he could smash people with. But
we didn't know that yet.
I guess I would love feedback from the group of how that hit, like how that
I was pretty freaked out.
Worked. Yeah.
Which part?
It seemed like, I mean, you made it.
It
seemed like he was getting healed, and then you said that he started getting irritated, and then freaked out, and then he just like freaked out and cut his arm off, which we were just like,
yeah. Right.
Almost like that. Because I didn't know what was going on either. It was like that scene whenever the mountain crushes that guy's head. Where it's just like, oh my god! Like,
no. Right. That's yeah. I was hoping that it would hit like that because no one other than Jake knew what was going on. But that's like that's sort of what I wanted it. I wanted it to be sort of like this extreme body modification, like like I'm so tired of my own arm, even though I'm undead, sort of scenario. But anyway,
it was unexpected extreme violence, is how I would.
Unexpected
self-inflicted extreme violence.
Yeah, self-inflicted. Yeah, right. Joe, do you have anything written down about that?
I just have that Rook's eyes, as he was laying there and the scorpion was crawling on him, and his eyes get big and his voice gets higher and higher as he tells us he's trying to stay calm. And I can just imagine Jake, like, as we're describing a scorpion crawling on him, Jake was probably like, you know.
Now, keep in mind for the viewers, this is a different Jake. There are two Jakes.
Right.
Yeah.
Jake.
The other Jake is working and listening at this stream right now, but yeah.
I do not play 3 characters.
Yeah.
But you would try.
Oh, I would.
That's a lot. Yeah, totally would. So, so Phidias is the character that Doug created and wanted to introduce to the game. So, the background was, me introducing this new character that Doug had selected, and it wasn't 2 or 3 encounters in the future that he was able to start playing a new character. Doug, do you remember you had created Phidias for a previous, like your original D&D character was Phidias on some level, right? You were
Phidias Mazrak. I think he was just Phidias, and he was a warlock.
He was a warlock, that's right. I remember that.
Warlock, of course, that's what you would typically expect of warlocks, and they look evil. They like to play evil, and just, I don't know. There was something I liked, and honestly, it came back to the original figurine that I had painted of Phidias, sitting on the shelf and looking at me as we were kind of wrapping up Occam, and I thought, I would love to play with that figure again because it's so great. So when we get a picture of it and post it up, you'll understand. Yeah. It's a beautiful sculpt. It's from a line that's not made anymore called Rackham Confrontation. Some of the most beautiful miniatures I've ever seen. Justin will attest to that. They were designed and sculpted in France by artisans there, and they're just, I don't know, they're amazing.
Really good.
But I think I just started looking around, realizing that our group needed another healer, and figure out would a drow healer work, and settled on a shaman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so a drow, for those of you that aren't familiar with D&D that are listening, a drow is a dark elf. A very high level generalization is a dark elf, but in Eberron, is a normal elf that 40,000 years ago in history was driven underground by a giant insurrection and a slave revolt, and so the drow became this underground race, and so their faces and their skin becomes really pale and sort of gray or blue. They start worshiping underground creatures and really kind of create this whole civilization separate from the world of elves, which are top dwelling creatures. They are patriarchal, so or I'm sorry, not patriarchal, but matriarchal. Their leaders and authorities are women in the tribes. There are 2 major tribes. I can't remember what their names are offhand, but one worships spiders and the other one worships scorpions. And so there's 2 very different tribes, and they fight constantly amongst themselves. But the key part is that they're very they're unaccepted and uncommon in above ground Eberron life. And so a drow is a extremely unique character class or a race to play in Eberron, because they're all underground. They're on another continent. They're somewhere else. And so Phidias,
they're not trusted.
Right.
They look scary, and they kind of have this. There's a lot of stereotypes that follow the drow. Some have some grounding in truth. Their society is very harsh and unforgiving. It is matriarchal, and so the men have practically little to no power. In fact, they're pretty much treated like possessions that are married off you try to be married off well so that you can help breed
That's
more
right.
daughters for the leadership. And anyway, it's kind of, there's just a lot there with Phidias's backstory, why he left his family to seek a new existence along the way. When he was he was born on a continent south of Corvair called Zendrick, and he ended up, when he left his family, and that's a whole other story in and of its own, made his way up to what's the is Stormreach is the big city right there at the north of Zendrick, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Stormreach is is the colonized city. That's
Now, if anybody listening has played D&D online, that primarily takes place in Stormreach, and Zendrick is one of the primary areas that you'll visit.
Mm-hmm.
His way to Zendrick, and sort of starts a new life for himself there. There is a community of drow there. They're very few and far between. They're very private. They typically don't really interact with each other too much, but it's sort of like the understand and the nod, like, okay, I know who you are. But they try to hide. That's the whole point. When they're in public, they try to hide. So what Phidias did while applying his trade to heal, he ended up finding an artificer would adjust him, but just someone who was able to make him like a special totem that when he wasn't using any magic ability, healing ability, this totem would give him what appeared to be a normal face, like a mask that looked like a normal elf, so he could blend into society more easily. However,
so Doug, you wrote a whole backstory and a history, and that totem actually is a family heirloom, and it's something that hasn't been revealed to any of the other characters even to date, like at this point. So it's
he's got a whole bunch of other secrets that he hasn't revealed at all today.
Right.
Yeah.
And I just want to I want to make sure that Joe peak. I'd like to not reveal too much about Phidias's the unrevealed parts of Phidias's backstory. He has a very, very rich multi-page backstory that he wrote for me, and I cherish it, and I'm excited to reveal it as it is allowed to be revealed. But Phidias is a complex character that Doug told me he relates a little bit more to in this scenario and wanted to play, and so I decided to introduce him in this way. We tried a shaman, which is a class that is not a part of 5th edition now, was a part of 3.5 edition and 4th edition, but is not a part of 5th edition. I don't know whether they'll bring one back. I'm sure there's homebrew versions of it if you guys are playing 5th edition. But the shaman is sort of like a spiritual healer, and so they have a spiritual extension of themselves called a spirit companion that they're able to send out into the battlefield to both heal and damage enemies. It's a really cool idea, a really neat concept for the actual mechanics of the game. And we introduced Doug's new character as the spirit companion, was the forefront of his introduction as the spiritual extension of his hands of healing to Rook. And he introduced himself as, an elf. It was later revealed that he was actually a drow, but that was only after he was comfortable with the party. And I think I remember, Doug, you kind of just, people, they kind of invited you, and you said, "Oh, well, I guess I'll go." I mean, I don't, I seek adventure. I want something else. And you kind of left your medical practice to your apprentice, who was also the front desk girl, to kind of maintain it as you continued with the party.
I think that's what it looked like on its face. But as we get more into depth with the story of the Serrani, I would say that probably there was more of a homing beacon inside of him that was pinged and has drawn him into this adventure with a very personal investment.
Yeah.
Trying to run away from his family and his people and his culture has caused him to run smack dab into it in a very strange and bizarre way.
Yeah.
One of the other unique things about Phidias that I kind of like and I was drawn toward is with him as an outsider trying to blend in, is there's an element of racism that he has to face in the world around him, that if he truly reveals his true self at the wrong moments, he could be throttled for it. Because the drow are just, there's lots of stereotypes about them. They're not trustworthy. They're evil. They look evil, and they do. They look badass, but that's just part of the gig. And so I sort of like this idea that he has a very strong and caring heart.
Yeah.
He just doesn't look the part, and I really like that.
Yeah. I totally agree. I mean, having blue skin and red eyes is an immediate turnoff for most surface dwellers. And that totem or that glamour visage that you could put on, I think was a key part of the story, at least in the beginning. We haven't really kept track of it, but we did create 2 individual miniatures that had, a normal elf sort of feel to it, and then also your drow feel to it too. I was thinking that would become more of an issue, but it sort of has become a little bit of a side issue, as the whole party in and of itself is so unique that we haven't really talked a lot about, making sure that you have your elf, kind of presence. There have been a couple of times when we've said, hey, I've asked you, do you have your totem activated or not, or things like that. The other thing that we wrote into it, I think we did it together, was that you don't have enough magical energy to both have your elven like face on at the same time as you using your powers for healing or for damaging. And so in any battle you look like a drow. There's no way that you can hold both of those things at the same time and fake your look and also be healing or damaging at the same time. So
which is why when you healed Rook, or when you went to heal Rook, you went behind the screen, right? You went behind a curtain,
exactly,
because you had to drop your glamour to perform your.
Right.
He would do it. He can also see through the eyes of his spirit companion. So he just goes back there and he takes a seat and summons the companion, and the companion comes out. And he does that to, first of all, protect himself, but also to protect his patients, because if they were to see him drop his glamour, they would freak out, and he would lose customers.
Right.
So there's a lot of, I remember we had that elf figurine, which was also really beautiful. That was a Rack of Miniatures one, and I played with that for a good long time, and I think until we went into our first encounter. And then I had to drop my glamour for the first time in front of the group, and then I switched figures to the actual drow, and everybody was like, so.
Yeah, I think that was the reveal, and I don't know how it hit the party, but that was sort of like the point of the 2 different figures. Like, oh, there's a kindly little elf with a quarterstaff kind of standing here, and then you brought out a figure that was very much ominous and sort of funny looking. So
yeah, so the sequence of events, like we went to Phidias the first time. He said he couldn't do anything today. He needed a day to like think about it or whatever. We went back. We went and took care of some business in Sharn. We went to Deathgate. We met with Zep and Mole.
You went to a magic shop, magic shop.
Yes. We went to a magic shop, and the magic shop actually is still one of my highlights ever.
That's why I want you to talk about it, because I think it's really
because like I was so excited to be in Sharn. My character was super excited to be in Sharn, and we were getting prices on like how much would it cost to send a message back home to my spire. We were shopping for armor. We were looking for weapons. And behind the scenes, you had said, "Hey, you all can buy, a magic item." And so we had like picked up our magic items, and we were really excited to be in the Magic District. Oh man, we're in the Magic District. And so we kind of had prices and things in mind, and we went into this one shop. I don't remember I didn't write down the name of it, but they sold wands. And like we went in and we were like, ooh, like look at this one, and it was like, oh, this is a wand of invisibility, and oh my goodness, and look at this is the wand of magic missile. Oh my gosh. And we like couldn't decide what we wanted to buy. And then we started looking at the prices, and it was like the wand of magic missile, and I was thinking this should be like 2,000 gold or whatever, but it was 20 gold. Couldn't believe it. Like, all right, well, we're definitely getting this. All right, let's go look at the wand of cure wounds. Should be like 500 gold. It's only 7 gold. What's the deal? Okay, this is great. And we're like bringing him up to the register, and the guy at the register was like, oh my gosh, this is so great. I haven't sold so many replica wands in ages. And we were like, wait a minute. Replicas. Right. Well, this is a replica wand of magic missile. It looks just like the real thing. We got nothing. We brought nothing.
I really loved that scene too, but it was very much built out of necessity because I was feeling a lot of pressure to actually find and research all of the potential things you could have bought and that were real, that had a dollar value attached, or a gold value attached to them, and stuff. I was feeling way overwhelmed with the economy of playing D&D, and so I steered you to a replica store so that I could kind of shut down your desire to buy things and to have an open market and economy very quickly. So for the people listening, and probably for my players, I'm not really big on the, like you play some role-playing games and you can go to a store and buy whatever you want, or buy, a certain number of things. Like I was already dealing with story, which is the thing I was primarily like investing my time in, with combat, which was something I was trying to balance and figure out, with like some level of treasure that you find at the end of encounters or things like that, and in experience points for all to allocate for leveling up and feeling like there's a some level of achievement. I didn't want to layer on top of that a whole economic world of gold, silver, and copper, trying to sell and buy things. And so the thing that I have minored on as a DM is economy. And so I didn't know how to introduce that concept to my players other than to accidentally have them stumble into a replica store and pretend to say, oh, we have so much gold, there's so much to buy, oh, this is all good stuff, and come to find out that it's all replica stuff.
Oh my god.
If I recall, Celestine did go to a Warforged shop and have some components added at this point, didn't he?
No. So that happened when you met Merrick Stakhaneth.
Because he lost his shield.
He did, yeah, but that also
I don't think I was using it at that point, because the full blade is a two-handed blade.
Also, the full blade broke, and so that's a whole other encounter story that's coming up really quick.
Yeah, that's later on.
But so I didn't ever have you guys walk into a store and hand select items, sort of thing, because for me that was overwhelming and complex. And I think as a DM, just a little bit of advice for any of you that want to be a DM, any of my players that would like to DM a game, you choose your battles. There are so many different things that you can do, so many different things you could major on. And I decided to major on the story part of the game, not necessarily combat. That was a necessity. Not necessarily the economy, which is the things you can buy and sell, but very, very much the narrative aspect of the game, which I feel like is for me is the part that I really enjoy and I really like. And so if my players at the first time, Sharn has everything. You can buy any piece of armor, weaponry, any trinket, anything in the whole game in Sharn, and I was feeling really overwhelmed with that at that point. So bringing you into a replica shop was a great way for me to say, like, not everything is for sale. And
I guess an easy analogy would be to say this campaign is less Diablo 2 and more Neverwinter Nights.
Oh my goodness, that's exactly right. I mean, that's totally it. Diablo 2, like, you have a ridiculous amount of buying and selling inventory, and it's all boring and mundane. until you find those epic weapons. And even, with the amount of weapons you find, it is even boring when you get the epic weapons. So when it comes down to it, I didn't want to be Diablo 2. I very, 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 very much wanted to be Baldur's Gate or Neverwinter Nights. Like, I really wanted to be story oriented, because there's so much more beauty in that and uniqueness than there is in saying you have a +2 wand to fire damage. That was the least thing, like the lowest thing on my list as far as a DM. So having this encounter in a replica store for me was a way to tell my players that this game is not about buying and selling items or about economy. It is about story. So I hope that hit, but that's that's the long example or explanation for why I did that.
Cool. It was fun.
It was fun. It was a good moment.
So we left the replica shop. We did some like other shopping for other stuff, but we ended up going back to Phidias's shop and trying to talk with his. We were early. We like tried to talk with his shop assistant, the cute little girl there, but I wrote down we roll high and awkward, and it didn't go well.
Like always.
Or high and awkward and low in practicality.
This is the point that Rook comes in. He lays down. Phidias is mumbling and grumbling. Rook passes out. Phidias says he doesn't think he can help, that he can cure this. Just then, Rook wakes up, screams, pulls out a dagger, and starts hacking at his arm. Before we can stop him, he cuts deep, and soon his hand is off. Rook looks strangely content to no longer have a stone hand and passes back out. Yeah. Phidias says he has failed, and his assistant comes out and bandages his stump. We talk about alternatives to get a new hand or something for Rook, and we go back to the Adventurers Quarter, and we find out that Orla has been transferred to the Shadow Marshes, where Murtali is.
Yep. Mole and Zep give you like they make it into Sharn and find you, and they give you a little bit of info like, hey, we've tracked Orla to the Shadow Marshes. That's where you need to head.
And that was kind of the what I have written down as season finale of part 1.
It was because like you guys were at level 10, moving to level 11, which was the Paragon Path. So I mean, I think given, kind of time of this stream, I think I want to describe each one of the characters, at this point and what their decision towards the Paragon Path will be. And again, the Paragon Path in D&D 4th edition is sort of a direction past heroic that you want to turn. It's sort of like a flavor to your heroism, a trajectory towards your end game. Which is the epic destiny. So Rook's obviously was to become a self-forged, and I had written in this cutting off of his own arm in order to rebuild himself. Celestine.
So Celestine's, his whole MO is to defend the only people that he knows, which is the people in his party. And because of his lack of knowledge, I'm kind of playing off of his own character stats. He's very charismatic, but he's also very unintelligent. And as a result of that, he's very motivated and successful in the things that he does, but doesn't necessarily always make the best choices. And so there's a lot of gray area in the decisions that he makes as a paladin. So his path was to become Celestine of the Grey Guard, which are kind of, I guess the easiest way to describe them is kind of like dirty cops. They make questionable decisions for the greater good, which is more or less what he does in the party. He does, he threatens people, he'll kill, steal, destroy for the greater good of his party and the mission. And so it felt like, that's the direction where his character was going. And so stat wise or not, I think me personally, I would have preferred to have him be a shield paladin because that's more useful. But fitting his storyline, being a Greyguard paladin, sort of fit his story arc.
Right. Yeah, I felt like that was really fitting, especially him not knowing where his origin or his source was, because a paladin has a deity as a source of their power, their ability to heal and do right, and so in general, a Warforged paladin is not a match. Like, Warforged don't have a devotion to a deity. They have just been emancipated, and they have a difficult time like narrowing themselves down and becoming slaves again to a single deity. And so that again was a very creative, difficult option, or kind of path for a paladin, a Warforged paladin to kind of pick. Also, Warforged aren't naturally high in charisma, and a paladin is a charismatic like magic user, and so, or stat user, and so there's a little bit of a mismatch to start anyway. And I think the Grey Guard was almost the only Paragon path that would have really fit Celestine's like actual character and playstyle. So
Yeah, he's somewhat of a unicorn as far as Warforged go.
yeah. And in the end, I mean, my job as a DM is to make all of you unicorns, because it's about all of you and not about being normal, and it's not about being average. It's about being heroic and above average. And so the only way you could make a newly awakened Warforged a unicorn is to make him a paladin, and also to make him amoral. So
And originally the min-maxer in me, and this was early on in our friendship, I said I want to make a Warforged paladin, or not a paladin, a Warforged monk, and I have all of these ideas about how to make a really awesome character. And you kind of heard the min-maxer in me and knew how my background in D&D and said absolutely not. But you could try a paladin.
I do remember that, and I think I was very much putting the story ahead of the winning of D&D. So I wanted a good story, and I felt like the dichotomy of having this Warforged that didn't know what his deity was, but had a deity sort of scenario, which for those of you listening will figure out further in the story the strain that has caused internally with Celestine. To need to have a patron but not know his patron for a paladin is really difficult to work through. So anyway, I was trying to push you, Jake, as a player towards what I wanted, which was narrative and not min-maxing. So anyway, yeah, I'm glad that worked out. I'm glad it has worked out. So,
it's been a fun journey.
It really has. Enceladus, do you remember how we chose your Paragon path?
Well, I'm like a Star Pack warlock, and I remember my Paragon path. I can't remember.
It's entrancing mystic. It's
entrancing mystic, yeah.
You're able to use your words to change the course of someone's history, sort of thing. I think it was very much in tune with the Rod of Chaos being sort of a part of you, and how the Rod was able to speak into the cosmos and change the course of history. That you also, in your persuasion and your ability to to talk to people and convince them of what you wanted them to do, that we decided on that Paragon path together.
Right.
It fit most with the Rod of Chaos at that point. So it was sort of like it was compelling everything around it, including you, to do what it wanted to, and you also had the power to compel those around you to do what you wanted them to do. And so it seemed to fit with your storyline and with the way the Rod was becoming more entwined in your destiny and your history, maybe than you wanted to, but it just was a plain fact that it was becoming a part of you.
Yeah, well, I had the Rod for a little while, and it was starting to affect my character.
Yeah.
And
it affected us too. I mean,
yeah,
Rook cut off his hand.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. I seem to have a hard time being apart from it from any period of time. I just it started to just become a part of my character, and eventually that becomes a bit of an issue.
Yeah, it's kind of like it was speaking for you in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
A lot of your decisions and a lot of your choices in battle, not necessarily out of battle, but we wanted that to sort of become a character feature for you, and so
Yeah, my character likes it,
for sure.
She
Yeah,
wasn't rid of it, but she kind of knew. She knows, like, this thing is so
right.
dark.
I feel like the rod gave Enceladus like confidence that she didn't know she had to speak out about the things that she thought she wanted, and to really kind of become a more bold voice in the party. And I liked how that hit as a character. And I did also really like how that hit along with the like the limitations that you had with the Rod of Chaos and things like that. I don't know. I really liked it, and I'm glad we kind of picked that direction for your character. I think you became more vocal and became more of like okay, I am actually here and I'm actually effective as a character after we picked that Paragon path together.
Yeah.
Tam, Joe, do you remember?
I think there was only like in the 4th edition book maybe 2 Paragon paths for the Ranger, and I picked the battlefield archer.
Yes, that's right.
Because it would help me win more. I didn't just want to win; I wanted to win even more. But it worked for the character because Tam really was very concerned with the conflict that is people were engaged in, and the conflict with the group.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was a power thing. All about power.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Totally. I feel like it was sort of Tam's sort of decision to become powerful so that he could be effective for both the party and his family, which is what his end, like tear was. Like it was either the party or his family, and he had to make that decision.
But let's not jump ahead.
Right. We won't jump ahead, but the decision in your Paragon path was to become more effective for whichever side you chose to invest in.
You got it.
Right. Phidias, it was sort of interesting timing that your character was introduced right when we were all picking Paragon paths, so you didn't even experience any level of heroic gameplay. You were immediately Phidias, Warrior of Spring.
Ventured enough on his way to Sharn, establishing himself that his Paragon path was already set by the time he met these fine folks.
Right. That's totally right. Yeah.
Which is interesting because we didn't actually have our Paragon path set. I know we had been thinking about it and talking about it, individually and as a group, but as of yet, it hadn't actually happened for another 2 story plot points in 2 months later.
That's totally right. Yeah, and just consequently, it was months later, that we kind of all discovered that. But Sharn was sort of a bookmark for that for everyone, and it was a marker for everyone to be kind of working into what they would be named and what they'd be called. And for some, like Celestine, we actually had a lot of behind the scenes role play, Jake and I, for that transition, and as well as Rook too. There are conversations between Merrick Stakanath that none of you know about that I will be revealing next stream, that are really powerful and really beautiful that no one has ever heard before except for Jake.
I'm excited.
Anyway, for those of you watching, thank you for watching. There's so much story here and so much beauty and wonderful, like it's a collective storytelling, and it's so much fun to hear about how everyone has experienced the story over the years we've played, and now to be able to share it on some level with you, even though we're all having to remember and retell the story. It doesn't quite encapsulate how it hit, but we're trying to convey that beauty and that, that goodness to you. So anyway, tune in 2 weeks. Not next week, we'll be unavailable, but the following week we'll pick up the story in Sharn where we left off, and hopefully we can contain it one more week. But I have a feeling it's going to be 2 more weeks after this to really fully. I'm really enjoying this. I do like playing D&D, and I do really like creating opportunities for story for everyone. But I really also like to talk about what was and what I was thinking and what everyone else and experience what my players were thinking at the same time as I was creating story opportunity for them. So
some things really are good. A lot. I was just gonna say some things are a lot heavier when you have the context. And I think having the backstory of everything that's happened so far can really make it even more entertaining to a certain aspect. You might not realize why we're freaking out about seeing a certain character, a certain gnome that we haven't seen for literally years. And so it's really important if you want to have as much fun as we're having to understand the context.
For sure. Anyway,
it's a good idea. Good for us to probably do a review like every year of what we did for the last years.
I was gonna say we'll have to keep doing this, and we don't necessarily need to bust through the whole 4 years, all 5 years straight in a row. We can split it up. But we've mentioned a few times 4th edition and 5th edition. How about a piece of homework, a request for our loyal listeners? As I've been trying to take a 4th edition character and turn it into 5th edition, and I've been trying to figure out how to do that for characters. I think Phidias is a really tough one. So if there's any 4th edition players out there who want to take the shaman, the warrior of spring, and see how you would turn that into a 5th edition character, I would be really curious because I haven't been able to figure out how to do it yet.
Right.
And you can just post it in the comments below. It's right next to the subscribe button.
And by the way, this will be on YouTube as well. One important piece of information that I can think about as far as those character archetypes, if you think about the comparison between a wizard and a sorcerer, a wizard gets their knowledge from books and uses components and is very much, as far as a spellcaster goes, offensively a jack of all trades. They're good at control, they're good at damage, summoning, enchanting. Whereas a sorcerer, they get their yes, nerds. They get their powers internally. They're not as versatile as a wizard is. They don't have as many spells, but they are more effective at the things that they do. So you go ahead and take that analogy. A cleric is the wizard of healers, and a shaman is the sorcerer of healers. So you can kind of take that analogy. There might be a way to take that analogy and sort of modify a cleric into being a shaman in 5th edition. So that's my one piece of advice for making that transition. But I don't know a whole lot about 5th edition, so good luck with that.
Well, this was fun.
Homework established.
Yep.
One week from tonight, we're gonna be heading to camping.
Yep.
And that's exciting.
I'm ready for the Natchies.
Ready for the Natchies. So again, thank you all for listening. We'll pick this up in 2 weeks. Till then, see ya.
Thank you.